When the Telugu language film RRR won Best Original Song at the 95th Academy Awards, it marked a rare moment where a purely Indian production captured the center of the Hollywood stage. For a massive global audience, the viral success of RRR was a sudden wake-up call. It revealed an entire highly developed cinematic ecosystem operating at maximum capacity, completely outside of Hollywood's traditional orbit. This chart shows the Indian film industry's massive output, producing over 2,500 feature films annually across 40 languages. Compare that to the US. Even after recovery, Hollywood produces roughly 500 films. India outproduces the US by more than 3 to 1. Yet, despite possessing this unmatched production volume and a domestic viewership of nearly 1.5 billion people, the industry operated largely in isolation from global mainstream dominance. That isolation ended when the industry changed how it distributed and marketed its stories. The Indian film industry has deep historical roots. Filmmakers have been churning out movies here since the silent era, dating back to 1913. By the 1980s and 90s, Hindi-language cinema, often referred to as Bollywood, had built a massive cultural footprint. It created global stars and defined Indian entertainment for the domestic audience and the widespread diaspora. But underneath that success lay a major structural vulnerability. The industry was actually fractured into distinct independent linguistic markets. Hindi, Telugu, Tamil, and Kannada films operated in rigid silos that rarely crossed over to audiences in neighboring states. A sprawling but internally divided industry couldn't challenge a unified Hollywood. To compete on the global stage, Indian studios first had to figure out how to conquer their own internal borders. That internal conquest began around 2015. South Indian film industries initiated a strategic pivot that rewrote the financial rules of the domestic box office. They developed what is now called the Pan-India model. Instead of targeting a single language group, studios started creating high-budget, event-based spectacles explicitly engineered to appeal across all linguistic and regional boundaries. The mechanics rely on massive scale. By combining aggressive multi-language dubbing with simultaneous saturation releases, sometimes hitting over 10,000 screens at once, these films completely bypass traditional regional barriers. Director S.S. of his Bahubali franchise, he demonstrated that a compelling cultural ethos could scale nationally. This map illustrates the financial outcome. As isolated regional zones dissolved into a unified market, domestic mega-hits began to routinely cross the massive 1,000 crore revenue threshold. Consolidating this fragmented domestic audience gave Indian studios the financial war chest and the operational scale required to take on the global box office. At the exact same time, a digital proliferation phase was underway. The arrival of global over-the-top streaming platforms provided a direct distribution pipeline for this newly unified content. India has an incredibly dense population of digital consumers. Local platforms alone, like Jio Hotstar, have captured user bases exceeding 500 million active users. For international expansion, streaming offered a perfect workaround. It allowed Indian producers to entirely bypass the rigid, highly competitive theatrical distribution bottlenecks that typically restrict foreign films in Western markets. Authentic, hyper-regional stories suddenly had direct access to international living rooms. Because of this pipeline, Indian series and films are now routinely placing in global streaming top 10 lists every week. These platforms decoupled Indian content from its domestic-only theatrical constraints, transforming an unmatched local production volume into an instant, scalable global export. The rise of these high-budget spectacles has turned the Indian media and entertainment sector into a $13 billion economic engine. This massive economic footprint translates directly into cultural soft power. Through viral social media trends and global streaming success, Indian narratives are influencing international culture far beyond the traditional diaspora audience. This chart reveals two diverging trends. While Hollywood has been navigating severe industry contractions, battling the aftershocks of labor strikes, decreased studio spending, and a sharp decline in production volume, India's output and global revenue are climbing. This model pairs immense production volume with rich cultural authenticity and high-tech scalability. It's proving to be a resilient business model, operating entirely independent of traditional Western studios. The global entertainment landscape is no longer exclusively defined by Los Angeles. Hollywood now shares the stage with an industry that has finally learned how to export its massive scale to the world.